All right, be it good or bad, it appears as though Mondays and Tuesdays are going to be book day, Wednesdays and Thursdays are going to be project day, pretty much, I would guess, from now on. All right, just so you know. So I'm going to start on Chapter 11. So if you'd please bring up your sports store project. I have no idea how long this will take. My guess is no longer than maybe 2. And the rest of the period, there are quite a few unit test problems in here, and I'd like you to at least attempt those. All right. A couple things. Let's see. First of all, just so you know, what is it? 2 weeks from Thursday. 2 weeks from Thursday, which is the 17th, that's the St. Louis Fall Job Fair, the one at Rankin, St. Louis. All right. Now, if you say, well, I'm not going to start looking till later, that's up to you. I'm just telling you. I went out there this morning. They send us this, which is a listing of all the companies that are coming. Okay, and as of right now, it looks like there's 300 some. And what I did was I went, for some reason, the woman there, I've tried talking to her, but she still has the old program name there, which is IWT. It changed from IWT to AWD about 3 or 4 years ago, but she never changed it in her stuff. Point is, there are like 30 firms that have IWT in there. So, you know, if you're interested, let me know. And if you don't have a ride, I can ask Shannon. I think that big, or that little mini bus is still back here, and she could take a dozen or so people if you're interested. That it usually runs from 9 o'clock till about noon, and she usually has people leave 8:15 to 8:30, and she usually leaves to come back here at about 11 to 11:15. So it's not like you'd be in danger of missing class, and even if you were a little late, if you could prove to me you were at the job fair, that I wouldn't have a problem with that. All right. All right, there was something else, but for whatever reason, I can't remember it right now. So, all right, so I am on page 275. Again, the chapter is around 30 pages. Now, just so you know, what the author starts to do in this chapter is build an administrative side to the sports store website. So he starts to build it, and you may or may not have thought about this before. The biggest problem right now with the site is that anybody can do anything with it. There is no administration to it right now. Anybody can see, go to any of these pages. Even after he gets done with this chapter, anyone can still go to any page. When we come back and reconvene tomorrow, Chapter 12 is entitled Sports Store Security and Finishing Touches. So he's going to basically bake the security in. All right? Okay. So, as he says here, in this chapter, we'll continue to build a sports store model, and we'll start to do administration. And as he shows here, you can see it on the screen or wherever, but he said the convention for managing items is 2 types of pages, a list page and an edit page. So he's going to start by basically creating the equivalent of this list page here, where he's going to list all of the different products that are currently in the sports store. All right. And then the idea is if you click on an individual product like kayak, all right, that's what'll come up. All right. He's going to use some built-in stuff here, but as this author oftentimes does, he'll say, well, we could do this, but this is a really kind of a bad way of doing it. I'd rather do it myself. So he'll show you both ways of doing it. And I did remember the other thing. Just so you're aware of it, you won't need it today, but I emailed everyone a folder. Tomorrow we're going to add images to the database. I sent you the images that I used. All right, I know they work, etc. You decide you don't like those and you want to put in your own, fine. All right. So it says together, this is going to allow us to create CRUD. You know what CRUD is already. It's not worth, going over that again, I don't believe. So the author wants us to go to our sports store web UI project and create a new controller, and that new controller will be called admin controller. All right. So again, from here, right mouse click on controllers. All right. Add controller. It will be an empty controller. All right. And he wants this to be called admin controller. So again, this is where we're going to start doing the administrative functionality. And I do hope that people realize, because I probably haven't done a stellar job of explaining this, and to be fair, neither has the author. But when you start to look, for instance, in this domain thing that he's got here, where he's got a lot of different stuff in entities, all right, and he's got stuff in concrete, and he's got stuff in abstract. This thing right here, this iProduct repository, it's like a go-between, all right? What it is it's an interface that the author has set up so that two different classes can communicate with one another indirectly, not directly. You might say, well, why would you want it indirect? He wants to set it up so if you change either class, it won't have an effect on the other class. And that's why he's done it like this, or at least I believe that's why he's done it like this. All right, this should look pretty familiar to you by now as far as when you set up a new controller like this, what we get, etc. There's really, I don't think, at least anything new there. All right. He wants us to change this, and this is why I mentioned it to you. Take a look on the screen here. Notice how he creates another one of these iProduct repositories. He is doing that all the time. So what he wants you to do is to replace what is in your class right now in your admin controller.cs file with the code that's shown on the top of page 276. So again, we're providing the information that's in Sports Store domain abstract. Why? Because that's where that iProduct repository stuff is set up. All right. And then we're coming through here, and again, rather than having two classes or a class communicate with other classes directly, he has it done indirectly by using that interface. All right. So it says the controller constructor declares a dependency on the iProduct repository interface. All right. I'm not going to say any more about it than that. Bless you. Now, if you look here down towards the middle part of page 276, you'll notice this is the first unit test. Again, I'm asking that you try to do those unit tests. All right? So the next thing that he's going to do in here, and it's kind of important that you at least look at this, and that is he's going to create another underscore layout file. But this underscore layout file that he's going to create is going to be for administrative purposes. So what we have to do is under the Sports Store UI, what we want to do is go to our View Shared folder, right mouse click, but choose Add MVC5 Layout Page Razor. And then call this underscore admin.cshtml. He says don't forget the underscore, and as they explain in here, technically you don't have to use the underscore, but there are other products that Microsoft has where the underscore is mandatory. That's why he recommends that you use it all the time, all right, with any of these system files like the one we're about to create. All right, so come on over here. Go to our Views Shared. I'm going to close a couple of these things that are open. So there's Views Shared right here. All right, and they want us to right mouse click here, click on Add, and choose, I think it's MVC5 Layout Page Razor. Let's double check. MVC5 Layout Page Razor. Yeah, and call it underscore admin layout.cshtml. Notice again you get the underscore by default, but this will be underscore admin layout. And when I work with these, when I start changing names all the time, I'll put my own extension in there. So underscore admin layout.cshtml. All right. And you can see what's in here. Let's talk about the most important thing that we don't want in here. All right. We don't want the user who is going to use this page, we do not want them to use this file right here, the underscore layout file. We don't want that one used. We want this one used. So how can we make sure that that doesn't happen? Well, you've seen this before. We want to add at the top the code that's shown here on the bottom of page 277. In other words, we want to add this. Layout equal null. All right? We want to make sure that they're going to end up using what we want them to use. All right? Now, when you look in here, it doesn't look like much. All right? In fact, we've got our doc type, our head, etc. But if I go down to here, I'm just going to grab these link tags and then the render body, which I think may be in there already. But we want these link tags, and what that's going to allow us to do is a little bit of styling when we get done with this. All right? Or as we're working on this. So again, if you look in here, there's not real much to this right now. All right, our title, etc. And we're adding Bootstrap CSS, Bootstrap theme CSS, and error styles CSS. Why the error styles? Because toward the end of the chapter, we're going to be doing validation. All right, we want to make sure that that error styles, you may or may not remember that file from the other day. But that's the one, where the heck is it? I don't remember. But, oh, it's under the content. That file is the one that we created the other day that's going to add the pink background if something is filled in incorrectly. Plus, it'll bring up a little validation error. All right, and we've got the validation summary for everything that's in there. Okay. So the author says we've added the call to render body method. Like I said, we don't have to because that, I believe at least, that call is already in there. There it is. And I do want you to understand, hopefully by saying this, I'm not presupposing too much from you guys, but that line right there, that line says take anything that I need to do basically in this routine and drop it in there. It's exactly what it's doing. All right? And you can only have one of these render body statements in each .cshtml file. All right. Now, this is the first time the author has done this. We are 278 pages into an 812-page book. This is going to be the first time that when he creates something, he's actually going to use a little bit of the scaffolding. In other words, it's not just going to be empty where he fills it in. All right? So as it says, to implement the list view, it says, now that we have a new layout, we can add a view to the project's index area. So we want to go into the Views Admin folder and select Add View, and this is what we're going to put in there. Okay? So I want to go into the Views, and under Views, let me close that. The Admin area, I want to right mouse click on there, choose Add, and choose View. Now, in the past, we've always done it basically by going over to the controller and right mouse clicking on our method of choice and basically setting it up like that. But in here, he doesn't do it like that. Instead, what he does is he calls it index, and this is where it's new. He doesn't choose empty without model. He doesn't choose empty. He chooses list. when you choose lists like this, the templating, the scaffolding, I should say, is going to provide some templated code in there for you. All right. Model class should be product. All right. There is nothing in the data context class. Make sure you put in the use a layout page. So in here, make sure that this is checked. Where is it? We don't want a partial view. We want to use the layout page. All right. Now, again, I think we've talked about this before, but just so you know, I can manually type that in if I know the path. Or I can click the ellipsis, which is probably easier and probably safer. All right. And I want to go under Views, Shared, and there is my _admin layout.cshtml. That's the one I want. You don't want to leave that blank. All right. We already said that layout equal null, so if you left it blank, there'd be no layout whatsoever in there. We don't want that. All right. So again, index, list, product, use a layout page, and make sure you've got the _admin layout. I believe that's exactly how it looks here. All right, if you've got all that, click the Add button. And this has got a lot more stuff in it than what we normally see. Again, just because of the fact that he has provided some of the scaffolding code by what he did. All right. Okay. I don't believe that he's changed anything in here. By now, hopefully you're all comfortable with, he's got what? He's got a table here. And in here, these are printing once. Those are the headings. In here, he's got a for loop. So that's cycling through everything that's in there. Again, that shouldn't really be anything new to anyone. All right? So it says, Visual Studio looks at the type of view model object and generates the elements, etc. You can see how this looks, or how it's rendered, by starting the application and going over to the admin index. Ideally, once we do, it's going to look like this. As always, it's a good idea to do a file, save all. All right. You can run it from anywhere, and I'll just iterate over to admin index. All right, and you can see it. There has been no formatting put on this page. And again, the bad news, so to speak, about this page is anyone can go there. You don't need to even be logged in if you need, if you know where things are. All right, and if you notice, what? Edit. All right, we haven't done it yet, but once you edit, we're going to do that in just a minute. That's going to bring everything up. Well, you don't want to set it up so somebody says, you know what, I want my own kayak, but I don't want it to be $275. I'd rather have it be $2.75. It is amazing. Maybe I've told you about this. I don't know. But I always remember watching a webinar with this guy. I was watching this security webinar one afternoon. And the guy who was giving it, it was in San Francisco. It was at a hotel. And he said the night before he wanted to get on the internet. Now today we get free Wi-Fi, etc. But back then you typically had to pay for it. So what he did was he went in, he was, okay, it's $9.99, it's not that bad. So he put in his credentials, and he noticed that nothing was secure. So what he did was he manually went into that page and changed the amount from $9.99 to 99 cents. He manually did that. Then when he did, he went downstairs to the office there, and he asked him for a summary of his bill. And he even mentioned, he said, they were saying, are you upset? Are you checking out? He said, no, I'm just looking at it for my records. And sure enough, they had charged him 99 cents for the internet. And the clerk even looked at it before she gave it to him. The bottom line or the takeaway from this is, if you know what you're doing, you know, would never say do something like that. Don't do things like that. They're illegal. But people do stuff like that all the time. So as it says, the scaffold view makes a reasonable attempt to set something up. It could be a heck of a lot worse. All right. And again, right now, if we click on any of these, nothing's going to happen because we haven't written any of those yet. All right. Remember, the only thing we have is list. All right. So it says, returning to the do-it-yourself approach, edit the index.cs HTML so that it looks like this. All right. And I believe he's talking about the one here that we just did, but let's check. It's going to be interesting. I honestly, what is this, like week 5, 6? I don't know. In week 9, again, I'm going to ask you to do course evaluations. And of course, you do them with Ms. Bruggeman at the end of the semester. But I'd like to hear what people have to say about this book. All right. It's very interesting because I went back over the weekend and I was reading the book we used last year. And this book made that book much easier to understand. All right. And there's a lot more code then on page 281 here. So it says, this view presents the information in a more compact form, omitting some of the properties that we had had previously. So it should look more like this. Let's check. Now I'm going to actually run it this time from admin index. So I'm going to right mouse click on that file and choose view in browser. I'm asking you this question. Can you look up on the screen? And what I'm going to say right now is going to sound a little weird maybe, but it's not an error. But do you see something that probably doesn't belong on this page? It's not a trick question. Yes. You typically do not want to show someone who is going to be running your program a field like the ID. It's not that you can't do it, but I believe what he's going to do next is he's going to make this a hidden for. All right? So in other words, you won't see it. Now, one thing to understand, please again look up on the screen here. We've got 9 products. All right? So let's say that I add a new product. Doesn't matter what it is. But I come in and I add a new item. All right? In fact, I think he adds a snorkel, under his water sports. So I come in and add a snorkel. Doesn't make sense to everybody. That's going to be a 10 right there. Snorkel, a price, and a delete button. Does that make sense? So I put in a snorkel, I remove it, and I put in something else. Did you hear what I said? I put in a snorkel, all right? I remove it, and let's say that I put in another kind of ball, all right? Not a soccer ball, let's just say a baseball. What's the ID going to be on it? No. Remember, it's auto increment. It's going to be 11. We lost that thing for 10. Does that make sense? We put a new one in and removed it. So that ID technically is gone now. All right, I know people who do that kind of thing and say, well, I can go into the database and put it in as 10. Yeah, you can, but that's not considered a very good practice. All right. And I'm looking here, and I just was trying to notice the differences I had with the author, and it looks like all that stuff looks the same. My button looks like it's to the left. His button looks like it's centered. Maybe I missed a line. I didn't think I did, but you never know. All right. All right, so it says now I have a nice list page. All right, the administrator can see the products in the catalog, and there are links or buttons to add, delete, and inspect items. Okay. In the following sections, we're going to add additional functionality. All right. So the idea, again, when you look at this, I'm going to run it one more time. Or is it still up there? I don't think so. Oh, it is. I'm not getting that because I have not written the edit page yet for admin. So I still can't look at it. I cannot change it. I could come in here and delete it. All right. When we go through our example, all right, when we start building our own project, we're going to make sure that when you click delete like that, you're always prompted to make sure, because sometimes you might just click delete for the wrong button or the wrong product rather. So as the author says here, and I'm down towards the bottom of page 282, but the author says editing products. All right. To provide, create, and update features, we'll add a product editing page similar to the one that was at the beginning of the chapter. It says there are two parts to this job. Part 1, display a page that will allow users to change values for properties. And number 2, allow the user to be able to process those changes once they're submitted. All right. So it says we're back in the admin controller, okay, and it says the edit method is shown here in the admin controller. It says this is the action method specified when you go in and click that. All right. So this is what we need to add. So you got your choice. You can either go in there and just add that stuff. I'm going to grab this. I'm going to go back to the admin controller. I'm going to grab the stuff here on top. Replace what's up there with this. All right. And I guess I got that twice. All right. And also come in here and down toward the bottom, add an edit. Let's add it and then go back and take a quick look at it. All right, so this is edit, and when you look right here, I see no post. All right, so what are we doing? It says product repository equal repository dot products. You don't have to do this, but this is all together here. All right. So it's going to go through there, and it's got first or default. So in other words, what's going to happen is it's expecting an ID. An ID of what? This is going to be the ID that's associated with that link that you click. So if I were to click kayak, which is the first product, it would be an ID of 1. And we're telling it to look in here, all right, and return that particular product's information. All right, again, you don't like my verbiage. This is how the author puts it. It says it just finds the product with the ID that corresponds to the product ID parameter that was given, and it passes that back again. All right. Then on the bottom of 283 and the first half of 284, there's another unit test here. All right. So it says now that we've got an action method, we can create an edit view for it. All right. So the author says, again, right mouse click on Views Admin, and again select MVC5 View Page Razor. View Page, not Layout Page. View Page Razor. So again, right mouse click, right mouse click on the Views Admin folder. All right. Add. I think it's a view. I don't even remember now. No, we want to add MVC5 View Page Razor. Get that out of there. MVC5 View Page Razor. Set the name to edit.cshtml. Says click the button to create the file and then edit the contents so it looks like what's on the bottom of 284 and the top of 285. So this will become our edit.cshtml file. You can immediately remove what's there and replace it with this. Plus what's on the top of the next page, on page 285. All right. Now, let's run it and then go back and take a look at it. So I'm going to save all this. Right mouse click on Edit under Admin and choose View in Browser. Well, that's interesting. See, it contains a null entry for parameter product ID of nullable type. Okay, an optional. Oh, okay. Yeah, we have to say what we want to edit. So if I put in 1, not found. Okay. See if I was missing something. I didn't think I was. This by now hopefully makes sense. This will say admin edit plus the name of the model, so it'll have all this, domain entities product. This is the layout we're using, which is the admin layout. That looks right. All right. This will be the model name, so again, it should say domain entities product, or at least product. What he put here, though, this editor for model. All right. What should have come up, I'm going to go take a look at it in just a second, but it says what should have come up here is this. Rather than us writing out the markup by hand, he called this editor for model. What that does is it puts everything out here for you automatically. All right. Is that a big thing? Yeah, it is. It's another time when you can use the equivalent of scaffolding to have a bunch of stuff written for you. But again, the big problem here is now you can edit anything, including editing the product ID. All right. All right, so it says to see the page that is generated from this, it says navigate again to admin index, click one of the product links. So I'll try that. If this gives me an error, I'm not worried about it right now. All right, now I'm clicking one of the product links, and there you go. All right. Again, the problem with this, so to speak, is the fact that I can come in here and change this now. you should never, ever even show, if you can help it, ID fields to an end user. Much less, even an administrator with this shouldn't be shown. Once you've set a primary key, it should be always set it and forget it. All right? So again, you saw that. And the author says, let's be honest, it was fast. We didn't have to put this stuff in ourselves, but it's not very attractive. Okay? So it says we can give the MVC framework directions on how to create things by using what's called model metadata. And we'll do this in a second, but if you look on the next page here, see this? This is what we're going to put in. And of course, the code that you see there that's in bold is the important code. The first one is we're going to make sure that the product ID is not shown. How? By setting the display value equal to false. Second, we're going to make the description field a multi-line field, multi-line text, so it'll automatically have the scroll bar arrows here and here. And you'll notice right here there is no longer anything in there for the product ID. All right? All right, it says this shows how to use the metadata on the product class, so we've got to go back to sportsstore.domain and make these changes in the products.cs file. So that'd be under entities, there's products, okay? And here under products, we're going to want to go and add these two using statements, our data annotation, which you're already familiar with, and system.web.mvc. All right. Again, as always, if you don't want the other ones that are in there, you could get rid of them. But let's just add what the author tells us to add here. That is the hidden before the product ID, which is right there. All right, and again, you don't have to do this. I like to have a blank line between each one of my fields here. All right, so I've now got that display equal false, and the other one right before the description will tell it to be a multi-line. All right, I'm going to save it. Go back to the web UI and run it again. I don't really have to do that, but I'm going to do that anyway. And what you should notice now, again, is once this comes up and we go to admin index and we choose one of the things that's in there, it will no longer show us the product ID. All right? And the description field will look a lot different. So I click on here, I'll choose soccer ball. Again, no product ID, and most of these aren't going to show anything because they're very small. The descriptions that were put in there are short, so they do fit in what we have. So again, I just ran it, but that's pretty much what it looks like. Okay? So it says the problem is right now that the editor for model knows nothing about the product class, and as it says, it generates some basic safe HTML. There's three ways that we can do this. One way technically is what we just did. All right. Another way is to go back and basically take what's there and add some CSS and or Bootstrap to it to make it easier, prettier, whatever you want to say. And the third is, and this is the one that he chooses, is to basically tear everything out of here and put the stuff in there manually. All right, by putting it in there manually, you've got the most control over it. All right, so that's what he explains in there. But he says the third approach is to create the elements directly without using the model level or helper method like we just did. All right, he says The idea, he says he very rarely uses the helper model. He prefers rather to create the HTML himself. So I'm going to go back in here and grab what he's got here and replace what's in the current edit.cshtml with this. All right, and it's all on there. It's all on page 287. So again, remove this, and again, the biggest culprit here was that editor for model right there. So remove all that, replace it with our own stuff, so to speak. Save, run the program again. Go to admin index, pick out a product. All right. This looks very bootstrappy. I don't know if you agree, but if you look up on the screen here, that looks a lot like what you get in Bootstrap right out of the box, so to speak. Right? There's nothing wrong with what he's got in there at all. You could argue and say it's a lot nicer because you got a lot more room here for the description. Now, with a little work, if you look up on the screen, too, we could turn this into a drop-down list, which would be easier. I mean, if you've got a lot of different categories, all right, if you do have a lot of different categories, it might be hard for a person to know exactly what's what. So a drop-down list might be a nice thing to have there. It's 1:22. It might be a little bit early, but rather than jumping into the next part, which is going to take a little bit of time, updating the product repository, let's just take a 10-minute break, please, and come back about, let's make it 1:35, please.